So I've been going through these 3 days or so of mourning the death of Charlie Kirk, somebody who I appreciated when I saw his clips, but I never watched his podcast or watched a Turning Point clip for too long. I liked it when he happened to be on podcasts I was already watching as the guest. I enjoyed that. And I understood who he was and what he was doing. I know that he was very accomplished in his mid-20s already in terms of writing books and those sort of things. Like everyone else, so many others, I was affected greatly. I was surprised. I saw the tweets coming in that his death was confirmed, and I wouldn't believe it until I went to Fox News X account and got their word on it that it had happened. And then at least twice that day I literally was trying to process through it, and my head just literally was just shook, like no. The next day I uttered the words, I took him for granted, and then I broke down in tears with that. I mean, like a baby. I took him for granted. Now I'm going on 55 next year. I knew what was certain was that he would outlive me and continue to do his good work, because if between me and him, he should have been the one to live a long life, because he was such a great producer for good. So there are things like that somebody over 50 might go through when and I was glad that I wasn't the only one to say it or refer to it, but he did so much between 18 and 31 we would love to all achieve in all of our adult lives. So many of us would love to have that level of achievement. So I'm glad that I wasn't alone in that, knowing what breaks the heart on day one and day two was that who can replace him? Who can do that? The reality is, none of us have moved out of shock yet, because it's too early. But we're all trying to process with one another, and like me, many of you have just sat and processed as well for the past few days, listening to people. I've followed tons of accounts, several accounts of people who I don't know, but they're out there inspired, mostly men. It's hard not to have thought about this a lot over the past 72 hours. This guy was affecting high school and junior high and college kids, and there's no way that he wasn't. And his death alone was of such a nature that worldwide there are junior high kids and high school kids that will not be left out of getting to see what took place on that day. His content is so key now, because people and kids and youth who have never heard of him now know what happened to him, and they who have never heard will now hear. And that's not millions, that's tens of millions, scores of millions. I wanted to say yesterday that we probably all feel it because God feels it. But I don't know that somebody can actually assert that, but there was a life of impact, and people are saying effectiveness. So I just would like to say that I didn't appreciate his strength and his leadership as much as I should have. I appreciate when he wins an argument for good and for the right and for conservatism and for the U.S. Constitution and its righteousness and goodness toward the spirit of human beings, in contrast to socialism and communism and how they oppress the spirit of human beings. They oppress human nature. But the U.S. Constitution in general and capitalism in general are good to human nature. And so I appreciate when he wins. I appreciate all the good that he does. But there are some things where I lean away from exactly how hardcore he was going on the trad life. I don't mind government incentives for things that could truly change a society. But as a coming up on 55-year-old childless, never married female who didn't do that to rebel or resist, just did it because I never pursued that. So big surprise, I never achieved that, and will not have the rewards of it in my old age. As that woman, I pull away from some of the hardcore you should, we shall, it must be, this must happen, trad commentary, and would here and there comment contrary to something that he or someone else would say that's like that. And it was such a contrast how my world was rocked when suddenly the guy that, although I disagreed with some aspect of him, of his latest commentary, which very much mirrored all the other conservative thought leader podcasters, almost as if it were a script, it was so clear to me that my focus on that really highlighted how much I didn't appreciate his strength and how much I did not appreciate his leadership. Because I can't go out there and do what he's done. And I can't immediately find someone to to put in his position. And in the back of my mind, I realized I was counting on him to be out there in the fight. I think he was going to bring more reality into the hearts and minds of youth that grow up into their 20s and 30s and become a part of society. I think he was going to infuse reality into a world that, in my opinion, for for several decades, the New World Order types have worked so hard with their NEA teachers and entertainment industry and media to create an anti-reality. And he was just, in the background, this laser, this spear cutting through all that, creating something else while they were working on continuing to groom us in their anti-reality. I think he had started to really get churning this movement of reality. Let's remember that this is a vulnerable time for us individually. It's a vulnerable time for a growing number of people around the world who have been affected by the loss of him, by his assassination, his martyrdom. And let's just be aware that there are the powerful who would like to increase their control in our lives, who would take advantage of it more than they already have.